Hey there, welcome back to WMBF News This Week. We're talking about senior fraud here in South Carolina, specifically Horry County. Lieutenant Governor Andre Bauer is here along with Ray Fontaine, Horry County Director of Council on Aging, and Michael Cathman, Horry County Police Department Detective. 56,000 or so seniors minimum before the latest census being scammed on some level, despite a lot of efforts to curb that. The state has the toll-free number to call for people to report these items, and people are calling. Is that accurate?
That's absolutely.
This is key, of course, to get the information out there. If anyone feels they've been victimized or feels that there's a potential scam going on, whether it's the open enrollment for Medicare, whether it's people just asking for money for donations for programs or projects that may not be valid, Michael, you would say call police if they're suspicious.
Absolutely. Before doing anything, anytime, especially if you're being pressured into it has to happen now or it needs to happen right away, it's time to back away. Notify a family member, a friend, law enforcement, the Better Business Bureau. Right. Seek advice somewhere to research what's going on before you act on what's presented to you.
And the utter reality is right now, potentially, people could be getting scammed. And you just talked about a little bit ago 2 specific calls of people that were duped out of money.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. There's variations. The scams can be initiated through the mail, by telephone, through an email. Advice on that, I would say, don't respond to unsolicited emails. Mm-hmm. Especially, there's it's called phishing, mm-hmm. where someone's going to pose as a legitimate company in order to, get your personal information. As far as mail goes, beware of anything that says you've won a sweepstakes or a lottery or inheritance or anything that's requiring money up front.
Right.
Michael, a good resource that is available for seniors online, if they were wanting to get information of all types of frauds that are out there, mm-hmm. they might want to get the Senior Fraud Prevention Resource Guide. And there's a website, and again, it's out of the Lieutenant Governor's office in Columbia. Is www.aging.sc.gov.
Okay, aging.sc.gov.
Correct, and
right.
It can explain and detail some of the current and other types of frauds that have been perpetrated, as well as resources as how to take a look at what they can do to protect themselves.
Jury duty was a big one, where they would trick folks into saying they had missed jury duty, mm-hmm. and then they'd act like they were befriending them and they were going to help them get out of this situation they were in, and they'd say, okay, give me your information, and they talked you right into giving your information. It's pretty slick maneuver, and most seniors don't realize they don't even have to do jury duty anyway.
That's not a requirement for seniors, correct?
A real long-term, current, past fraud is the quick fix repair person who comes in and is going to repair a variety of things in our old folks' home, asking for payment up front, and repairs are never done, money is gone. Be careful about those. Too good a deal is usually not a good deal at all.
And we always try to encourage people to get references, check with the Better Business Bureau.
Correct.
Sometimes it seems like taking advantage of such a great deal, you don't need to do those checks, but obviously in a lot of cases you've seen that's when they get scammed.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, well, we appreciate that information. Of course, Ray Fontaine with Horry County Director of Council on Aging, and Michael Cathman, Horry County Police Department Detective. We appreciate your information. We're going to take a break now, and when we do come back, we're going to sit one-on-one with Lieutenant Governor Andre Bauer and take a look at the state's situation right now, but also one-on-one about some of his accolades and maybe some regrets that he's had as Lieutenant Governor. Stay close. Welcome back to WMBF News This Week. I'm your host, Michael Maley. We've been talking about the scams on seniors and the Medicare open enrollment program. Now we're going to focus a little bit more on some of the work Lieutenant Governor Andre Bauer has done with the Council on Aging across the state, and then also delve into some of your reflections as you look to wrap up your 8 years here as Lieutenant Governor. We have talked again about the scam as well for the Medicare program. Can we touch a little bit on what's new is just recently the Medicaid system and some of the short funding? I think the latest report that we'd done was to the tune of $228 million in South Carolina. I don't expect that you have an answer, but what I guess is kind of the consensus in Columbia when we think about the shortfalls?
Well, we're going to have to make some tough choices. I say we, I'm still a citizen of the state. I won't be one of the decision makers anymore, but we're going to have to look at what are the real fiduciary responsibilities of government. Not everything should government be paying for, or will they be able to pay for, and so we're going to have to prioritize what the important things are. We're going to have to do away with some of the things that we've been doing in the past. I saw in Greenville this summer they built 3 water parks in this tough time. And again, those are just not priorities we ought to be spending our money on from a public sector.
Right. I want to put it in perspective a little bit, if we can, the Medicaid problem. The latest segment that we had, our reporter, WMBF News reporter Megan Miller, just did a story on this. And let's touch on this now. We'll show you her report now on WMBF News this week.
It's safe to say the recession has taken a toll on jobs, the money going into your wallet, and now more people seeking Medicaid help could make health care its next target.
But we didn't expect the magnitude that they've just recently announced.
Call it a shock or a surprise, but Brett Marsh says the Conway Medical Center is bracing itself for a multi-million-dollar gap in its budget next year.
We have spent a great deal of time over the last few months looking at our overall operation.
Necessary adjustments to the operation of the hospital have come at the expense of Medicaid reimbursement from the state.
22% of our total revenue, so it is a significant portion of what happens here in the hospital.
Now a $228 million shortfall in South Carolina Medicaid has the Department of Health and Human Services on track to run out of money in March.
Grown by more than 100,000 people since the recession officially began in December 2007. It speaks to the great demand out there and the number of people who are in need of assistance.
While the future of Medicaid reimbursement is unclear.
For the year 2011, we had projected roughly a little over $250,000 in Medicaid funding.
It's already a done deal for hospice programs like Mercy Care in Myrtle Beach. Health and Human Services has axed funding for end-of-life programs across the state.
We have frozen 5 positions that we had planned on hiring for 2011, and I think you'll see that across the state where positions will be eliminated or frozen because of the cutback in funding.
With more than 100 patients under the nonprofit agency's care, news of the cuts and hiring freeze isn't sitting well with some Mercy Care employees.
It's morally, ethically reprehensible. What they're doing is they're playing a shell game with the most critically ill, elderly, frail people, poorest people that are our neighbors in this community, in our state of South Carolina, and they're saying that we're not going to pay for end-of-life care for you.
But now that tough times are knocking, both Mercy Care and Conway Medical say they'll have to buckle down, continue quality care at low costs, and weather the storm.
It's going to mean that we're still going to cover these patient lives because that's what our mission is. But how do you do that and still stay in business?
The State Budget and Control Board is expected to decide in upcoming weeks whether or not it will give assistance to Health and Human Services. Should they not grant the agency financial assistance, officials say Medicaid reimbursements will stop statewide on March 4th. Reporting in the studio tonight, I'm Megan Miller for WMBF News.
And when you see there, I think we had Mercy Care was one of the providers out there saying we've got to make some seriously tough decisions when this funding is going to be cut. No one has the answer to help this funding, to save these programs, but do you think that it requires creative thinking?
It's going to be a very creative year in the legislature. It's going to have to be something like a tax credit for someone who's willing to provide end-of-life care, maybe a family member that can provide some of these services, because we're not going to have the money in the government to do it. So offer a tax credit that's a savings to the taxpayer. But we've got to get creative. We're going to have to find very creative ways to solve some of these problems.
And it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be something that we've got no choice but to try to figure something out.
No question.
All right, let's switch gears a little bit now. Coming up January 12th, I guess at noon, I think you said, is when you're officially out of office as Lieutenant Governor.
You hiring here?
I don't think we could afford you, to be honest with you. No, but
you'd be surprised what they pay the Lieutenant Governor.
Give us a perspective. The past 8 years, we've seen so much with the Council on Aging and your efforts, with what's happened with Governor Sanford, the good, the bad. When you look back at your last 8 years, what do you most hold on to? What do you most think you'll not forget?
The fact that 6 years ago they put aging in the Lieutenant Governor's office and took basically a ceremonial position, and I ran and said we'll do so much more with the job, and I tried to live up to my commitment to the people of South Carolina, and we got aging while I still had 3 grandparents living. They've all passed now, moved into Lieutenant Governor's office, and the people of South Carolina, if you ask especially a senior who is their spokesperson, who is their champion, whomever the Lieutenant Governor is, Andre Bauer, Ken Ard, whoever, they know the Lieutenant Governor of this state is now the person that looks out for them. When they need an advocate, they go to them. When someone's taking advantage of them, they go to Lieutenant Governor. And so finally, the biggest growing part of our population has someone in Columbia to fight for them. And I think that is probably the most important and significant thing that I've done in the 14 years I've served in the General Assembly.
Yeah, and that's a good perspective. Do you feel like that position has enough teeth as Lieutenant Governor, maybe now, or getting more teeth so that you can help get laws passed or laws potentially changed that might help protect some of the seniors out here?
Well, first off, since I'm not going to be the Lieutenant Governor anymore and I'm not advocating for Andre, it ought to be a full-time job.
Yeah.
The fact that we pay all the constitutional officers except the Lieutenant Governor twice as much as the Lieutenant Governor, and you still have more duties than any of them, it is ridiculous that that's not a full-time job. And whomever the next one is, I would advocate make it a full-time job so they're not off trying to do something else, moonlighting to pay their bills.
Yeah.
You know, there are people in the office that make double what the Lieutenant Governor does.
Right.
Your Chief of Staff makes twice as much as you do. The Director of Aging makes twice as much as you do. It just doesn't make sense.
And despite that, your time there, your effort and your work wouldn't be half as much. I'm sure you worked as much, you would say, and the Lieutenant Governor would work as much, if not more, than a lot of those full-time positions.
Well, I think it ought to be full-time. I don't think the Lieutenant Governor ought to have the luxury of doing something else. I think you want them there full-time, and I think they ought to be more utilized by the Governor. I hope Governor Haley will use Lieutenant Governor Ard in a much bigger role, especially for economic development. Ken's a sharp individual. He'll do a great job as Lieutenant Governor. He's a businessman. Put him on the road selling South Carolina.
Yeah. What are your feelings? Of course, you were looking for political office. What are your feelings right now looking forth? Is there something that you would consider running for? If so, there's a lot of rumor and discussion about redistricting, of course, here along Horry County. Is the Grand Strand something that you might have interest to as far as running, if you're even considering running for something in the future?
Well, I don't rule out anything. Right now, I am enjoying the fact that in January, I'm going to have some free time.
Right.
I'm going to get to recharge my batteries. I'm going to take some trips. I'm going to just take a breather. I got elected at 26. Never even thought I'd win that election. I was just frustrated as a business owner. I'm actually doing some real estate deals right now in Horry County. I've got 6 of them right now I'm working on, and so I'm back into trying to get ready to take my next course in life, and that'll be, you know, I like politics, but I love business. And so first and foremost, I'm a business person who got fed up with so many things I see going wrong and making it more difficult on a business owner. So I'm not ruling out that I wouldn't do something in the future, and of course everybody knows I love it here, and this has been my best area of the state for several elections. But right now I'm turning on, you know, I took my mom and cooked her dinner last night. I want to spend a little bit of time with my family. I mean, my parents are starting to get physical ailments, and so, you know, you just that life clock is so precious, and I need to capitalize on that.
Well said. Of course, your hands are tied to some extent as far as what you can do as Lieutenant Governor for the businesses, but since your motive was to get into politics on behalf of the business owners, do you feel like we're going in the right direction for that?
No.
Not at all.
I shouldn't say not at all. We are great in the fact, I think Mark Sanford in these last 6 months, and Joe Taylor, he is not getting enough credit. We have set the woods on fire. South Carolina more and more is internationally known every day. The companies that are coming here are tremendous. Yeah. I mean, both of them need a good attaboy. Right. But what we're doing at the city, county, state, and federal level, we are choking it down for people to make a living. And we are making it so difficult on business. Entrepreneurs are saying, you know what, do I really want to take that capital I have now, take a risk and invest it when I'm going to be taxed so highly, when I'm going to have so much regulation placed on me, when government agencies take so long to call me back, and they're frustrated.
In just wrapping up, you've gotten a lot of flack for a lot of things. Is there anything specifically you regret? I know that the Daily Show, the comedy
Absolutely.
show
The biggest thing I regret is I couldn't convince the voters of South Carolina to elect me as governor.
Well, there you go. That's a fair regret. A fair regret. Anything, just kind of wrapping up, you want people to know who maybe have misunderstood you? I know the comedy shows, both Governor Sanford and yourself have gone after us. It seems like in some of the comments you've made, the stray animals comment, I think, for the welfare system. Anything you'd say differently, do differently if you could do it again?
No, I need a louder megaphone. We have got to address the problems in this country. If you look at parents that don't come to child schools, and those are our most failing schools, if you look at the fact that we have generational welfare, 5 generations deep now, if you look at all these social programs, we have got to address what's causing the problem. And too many politicians, almost all of them, want to sugarcoat it, and they don't want to address the problem. I don't like the fact that it was defined by a person in the media what my comments meant when I know exactly what I meant, and I meant that we've got to break this cycle. But the discussion still needs to be had, and I've got the callus and the backbone to say, I don't care what the media says, we're going to engage in this dialogue. And it's not about winning elections, it's about fixing problems.
Excellent. Lieutenant Governor Andre Barrow, we do appreciate your candor today and your service these past 8 years, at least as Lieutenant Governor.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for your time, and of course, we'll always have the latest topics on WMBF News This Week. Have a good weekend.